Good afternoon. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is John Norai, and I'll be your moderator for today. If you should have any technical difficulties as you're watching the webinar, you'll need this phone number, toll-free 85352-922. And when you call that number, you'll need the web at the bottom, 555-9. We're asking the spread the message by tweeting, and the handle that we'd like you to use is the NASSP handle. It's on your screen now. Also want to remind you that NASSP has a presence on Facebook, and the website is listed at the end of the slide. If you choose to get a certificate attesting to your today's slides or today's webinar, you will be able to get at nassp.org/webinar. And I do want to mention that today's session is being recorded. The slides and the recording will be available on the NASSP website within 48 hours. So hopefully those of you who have questions about what a slide said will be able to go back to it and have that downloaded to your own site. Today's presenter is Joan Octor, and I'd like to give you a few sentences of background about Joan. She leads NASSP's professional development, ensuring that all principals, assistant principals, and aspiring middle and high school leaders have the research, the information, programs, and conferences that enable them to successfully lead their schools. Prior to joining NASSP, Ms. Octor was the Chief Learning Officer at Cricket Media, an educational company that connects children across the globe to learn together. She was responsible for the company's education strategy, global community, digital library, Into Books program, and the Educational Foundation. And under her leadership, Cricket Media developed collaborative distance learning products, global learning platforms, and partnered with the Smithsonian Institution to design and host global educational contests. A lifelong learner, Ms. Octor has served as the Chief Program Officer at the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards, where she reinvigorated the standards and assessment development process, developed new products, and led innovations in teaching methodologies and educational leadership. And as Executive Director at the GED Testing Service, Ms. Octor led a turnaround effort that enhanced the value of the diploma and enabled unprecedented numbers of adults to earn their high school credential. She has also held positions with the College Board, West Virginia State Department of Education, and the Logan County Board of Education. Joan has repeatedly integrated technology into educational programs to increase their effectiveness, expand their reach, and improve learning outcomes. She's a frequent presenter at national conferences and has served on national committees, including the Bill and Melinda Gates Measures of Effective Teaching Technical Advisory Committee. She's authored articles and chapters, including integrating student standardized tests and formative assessments for professional teaching standards and the development process. During the webinar, your presenter invites you to put your questions into the question box. I'll be monitoring those. And when we get to the end of the webinar, Joan will have a Q&A session and be available to answer all of your questions. And with that, I'd like to turn things over to Joan.
Thank you, John. I guess from that introduction, you can tell I'm older than dirt, but I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you about the importance of standards for school leaders, because leadership matters and you matter. But what's more important about my background today is that we at NASSP are using the PSEL standards as the foundation of our new for building ranks. And then I also serve as the SPA coordinator for CAPE that reviews all principal preparation programs, and served on the standards committee to develop the NELP standards. So I'm very immersed in these standards and excited to share them with you.
Joan, for a second and
yes.
tell you there was a glitch at the beginning here of the recording, and I think that the very beginning was cut off. So you might want to repeat your first sentence just so we can get people back on the right page.
Okay, I was just on the introduction, John.
Okay, so you can go ahead then.
Okay, it went back. The slides went back
Okay.
to the
Go ahead.
Twitter slide.
Go ahead and try to put it forward. If you can't make it go forward, I will. No, there you go. You're in control.
Okay. So I just introduced myself a little more aligned with standards development. And what we're hearing today is school leaders are very interested in what this means to them as you do your job. You're living in a world of hyper change. Your role as a school leader is very complex, and you're challenged with ensuring that each child is college and career ready. And today, we don't really know what career ready means for students that enter today. The jobs that we have today may not be there. So how would these standards help you? What will they look like in practice? And more importantly, the states are even coming to us saying, what do these standards mean for our state standards? Several states are looking at the transition from the ISLIC standards to the PSEL standards and trying to get a strong alignment. Okay, folks. As you heard all the things about what I've had with technology, we're having a little difficulty with there we go. So there is an organization out there that everyone's not aware of, the National Policy Board for Educational Administration, and it's the organizations that are directly related with leadership. Some that you're very familiar with, which would be the two principal organizations, NASSP and NAESP, as well as the two organizations that lead college preparation programs, ICPEA and UCEA. And then we move to the state level with the Council of Chief State School Officers, as well as the Superintendent's Association. Their mission is to enhance leadership for the nation's schools and the preparation for future school leaders. I'm showing you this slide and the link below because if you wish to have a copy of the PSEL standards, you can go to the NPBEA website and download a copy of these standards. And that's the website. In 2015, the Council of Chief State School Officers and NPBEA collaborated to define the changing role, the complex role of the school principal, and develop the professional standards for educational leaders. These standards, as you look at these 10, you can see a portrait of your practice, the complex nature of what you should know, be able to do, and lead. And you can also see that there is no possible way that one human being can be responsible to do all of these things independently. Thus, the elevated role of distributed leadership and relationships in what a school leader needs to do today. We started in 1997 with the ISLIC standards. The 2008 ISLIC standards are the third generation. As you notice on the left, the ISLIC standards were designed to inform policy. The new PSEL standards are designed to inform practice. You can see the difference in the purposes. What I want to really emphasize is nothing from what was included in the ISLIC standards was abandoned. So everything you're doing today, everything you're practicing now is still critical. It's just that these skills have expanded to reach what we need to know and be able to do in today's fast-changing environment. So the new standards reflect the addition. So with the ISLIC standards, we were more in policy, no child left behind. It was more addressing the academic achievement of our students. we were measuring outcomes. Today, with the PSEL standards, the new Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA, further explicates what a student should know and be able to do when they leave school. It's the whole child, the measure of the school climate, and student engagement. So we're moving from outcomes, students demonstrating outcomes, to students to be able to continue to use the process of learning and apply it after they leave our schools. So the 10 standards have a stronger emphasis on student learning, and they really focus on each student, which, when we say all students, allows some students to fall through the cracks. And we've moved from only academic rigor to support and care. So each standard talks about academic success and well-being, and also for each student and adults. So the adults in the school are as important in the new standards, because if the adults in the school are not academically prepared and successful, then the students cannot be. So each of the 10 standards has the two cookies around the middle, effective educational leaders. They each start with effective educational leaders, and they all end with the academic success and well-being of each student. So that's a big change from where we have been. And you'll notice in Standard 1, to give you a little picture of the transition from the ISLIC standards to the PSEL standards, the ISLIC Standard 1 was focused on vision. This new standard talks about mission, vision, and core values. And if you look at the words in yellow highlight, what are you supposed to do with these? Well, you're supposed to develop them, you're supposed to advocate for them and enact them. And not only do that, but do it in a shared way. And it's your mission, your vision, and your core values. Now, this is a little bit overwhelming when you glance at it, but it's to show you that there are 7 components. When you break down that one standard, there's a lot behind it. The yellow are the verbs, and it talks about each of the components. So you're developing your mission, and notice the shared comes in, the collaboration to develop the vision. And then you articulate, advocate, and cultivate core values. And what are our core values? Child-centered education, high expectations and student support, equity, inclusiveness and social justice, openness, caring, and trust, and continuous improvement. That's a big statement to share with your staff. What is it we're doing here? What are our core values? What do we really believe in? It's an excellent opportunity for you to have a discussion with your staff. And then not only are you developing them, you're implementing them and evaluating your actions to achieve them. And then in that plan, do, check, act, you review them and you adjust them. And then you develop your shared understanding and commitment. So there's a lot packed into each of these 10 standards. Good studies and the school level for what your school needs to look like, and your role as leader, and with all of the collaboration, everyone on your team's responsibility to be part of developing that and carrying it out. So you can look at the mission, vision, and core values, and you're emphasizing 3 things, and you're asking different questions. What is our purpose or our mission? Where do we want to be in the future, or our vision? And how will we conduct ourselves? Each person in your school, your teachers, your students, but not only them, your cooks, your bus drivers, your parents, your broader community should be living the mission and vision and core values. Next, we move to ethics, which used to be ethics only, and now it's ethics and professional norms. And notice again, effective educational leaders promote each student's academic success and well-being by acting ethically according to professional norms. And if you just read the first two components, how packed they are with all of the different aspects of your role today. You act ethically and professionally in your personal conduct, your relationships with others, your decision-making, your stewardship of your school's resources, and all aspects of the school leadership. So each of these components offer a great opportunity for reflection, offer a great opportunity for rich discussions in your school building, because each person in your school you should be modeling this so that each person in your school can act the same. And I think it's critical to note that throughout the standards, they talk about the understanding not just of your students, but your staff members' backgrounds and cultures. So it's everyone in the school community. So to summarize, the role and characteristics of the principals is to provide moral direction, act ethically, and lead with interpersonal and communication skills and social emotional insight, which is quite a different lens than the prior direction that was more compliance-oriented. And having a little lag time here. So standard 3, equity, this is the era of equity. Equity, not only the equity, but also cultural responsiveness. What does that mean today? I'd love to use this particular slide, and I think if you think of this ballpark out here as the AP courses that we're now starting to offer. If there's a quality in how you do it, every student has access to AP courses, and you give everyone the same support, they're not having the same opportunities for success. For equity, if you want everyone to have access to AP courses, then you need to look at the different levels of support that each student needs to have success in the AP world. And you can put anything in the ballpark that you want, but you also have to look at then where is each student in relation to being successful. And into equity, there are new issues, new concepts that you have to work with as a school leader that weren't present in the past. So you're asked to confront and alter institutional biases of student marginalization, deficit-based schooling, and low expectations associated with race, class, culture and language, gender and sexual orientation, and disability or special status. When you look at that one component, that's a huge responsibility for which you need a lot of support. Also in this one standard, where we live today, this component promote the preparation of students to live productively in and contribute to diverse cultural contexts of a global society. We used to think of that as in our future or outside of our school or our community. And today, each student has the world between their two thumbs when they have their devices. And so how do we move to the place where they live and understand how to support them, how to evaluate what they're seeing, and how to be supportive in a global society. So we move to curriculum, instruction, and assessment. We all feel like we know this one pretty well. You've been asked to move from managers to instructional leaders. So curriculum, instruction, and assessment shouldn't be too much of a surprise. However, now we're saying develop and support intellectually rigorous, coherent systems of curriculum, instruction, and assessment. So what's the overarching curriculum? How do we teach to it? And then how do we measure specifically that which we've taught? When you look at this, you've seen often curriculum and instruction, but the coherent systems that also are promoting the mission, vision, the core values, and are culturally responsive, and then aligning and focusing this system, which I think is wonderful. We're now thinking of within and across grade levels, then moving from the systems to the instructional practice that's consistent with where the students are, and ensuring that the practice and the effective use of technology are being measured with valid assessments, and then using the data that you get from that to appropriately monitor student progress and improve instruction. So you can see that from this one slide, you could work with your leading and learning teams to say, how are we aligned? How are we doing these things? What does this look like in practice in our school? And now, after all those things, we're halfway there. We're at Standard 5, which is a community of care and support for students. So notice that this is intentionally limiting this standard to students, not the whole school community. And notice that inclusive, caring, and supporting are called out here. We don't have time to see this video now, but I'm including it so that if you go in the archive for this webinar, you can go to this video and you can see the day in the life of school from a child's perspective, when adults are not caring and supportive and inclusive, and then the transition to when they are. It's a beautiful video to use for training and for discussion. So again, just to stress how your responsibilities have broadened, we're now talking consistently about the academic, the social, the emotional, and physical needs. So we've gone from academic success to social, emotional, and physical needs. And then this one I think is beautiful. Each student is known, accepted, valued, trusted, respected, and cared for. And in our development of building ranks, we interviewed a principal who talked about a system he put in place in his school. He had his faculty sit down and create a 3x5 index card for each child in that school. And what they found is there were 26 students for whom the faculty could not write anything. And so the directive was for each adult to take one of those students and build a meaningful relationship so that there were no students in that school who were unknown, and build the trust and the respect so that those students became engaged and were part of the school community. So it's a very critical change in these standards and a very needed addition. Now we get to the second half of the standards, and you're going to see new call-outs that haven't been in the ISLIC standards before or not called out at this level. And because you need all of the teachers and the staff in the school to take on leadership roles, developing the professional capacity and practice of your school personnel is critical, and it's important enough to have its own standard. There are many components in this standard. Some you'll see are things that you have been doing: managing for turnover and succession, opportunities for induction and mentoring, continuous improvement, actionable feedback. But here's one that I find really fascinating. As we work with principal groups and we bring them in for many reasons to give us guidance in everything we're doing, we're often told we need help with work-life balance. We need help with our own well-being. This standard gives you the evidence you need to go say, hey, this is a standard component. We really need to address this. I need to promote the professional and personal health, well-being, and work-life balance of my faculty and staff. But just as importantly, and this is the last thing most school leaders do because you're selfless, you need to tend to your own learning through reflection, study, and improvement, and maintaining a healthy work-life balance. A group of principals and school counselors and I just attended a meeting in Fort Leavenworth that was led by the Army, and not surprisingly, they're finding that their leaders have the same need. So they worked with a Surgeon General to create a performance triad for all of the members of the Army that focuses on their physical, their mental, and their well-being. And Brigadier General Jill Ferris will be with us at the conference this summer in Chicago to share that process with us. Not only do they have activities for the adults, but they also have a full program for students. So you could have a dual program running for everyone in your school. And they're also going to have physical training for us every morning. So bring your workout clothes, come to the conference, and join us for workouts. There are also 8 elements dedicated to the specific aspects of how to support the adults in your learning community. So those are good components to talk over with your staff. Which ones resonate with them? What do they think you could do differently or better to help this work for them? Because our teachers and staff are critical to the success of the students' academic achievement. And if you look just at these last 3, notice how collaboratively, working collaboratively for their professional learning, working collaboratively for the examination of practice, and encourage the shared leadership so that the faculty helps come up with improvement of programs and practices. And we all know it takes a village. With the broader scope of responsibilities that you have to your students today, it's critical that there's meaningful engagement of families and communities beyond the wonderful two-way communications with them to let them know what's going on in the school, what their students are doing. How do we make these meaningful and reciprocal and mutually beneficial to both the students and their families, as well as the school itself? You can sit with your faculty, with your parents, with your broader community, and talk about these different components. What do they look like in your organization? And how can you measure whether they're successful or not? Not taking the full responsibility for making these happen yourself, but engaging your community and working with you to evaluate these. How do you develop and provide your school in a reciprocal way as a resource for families in the community? And then beyond that is building and sustaining productive partnerships with public and private sectors. It's all about relationships. To be successful today with the limited resources, it's critical to identify those people in your community who bring those resources that you need and have them actively engaged. Earlier, we talked about your picture as a leader of learning. Now the pendulum is sort of swung to instructional leader, but you're still the CEO of your organization. The operational aspects are still as critical as they've always been to manage the school operations and resources so that learning can take place. It's a huge responsibility. The traditional systems and processes are still there, the plan, do, check, act, but management has evolved. Not only are you managing your resources within your building, but it's also critical to develop and manage relationships with feeder and connecting schools for enrollment management and curricular and instructional articulation. I'm sure many of you have pyramids or feeder patterns where you work across and work with each other. It should be the norm today. And we're at standard 10, and I'm wondering if you're feeling overwhelmed by the first 9, but this puts the final pixels in your portrait. You've accomplished the first 9 things. Things are good. Now, to get to great, you're looking at your continuous school improvement. You start with engaging others in the process of evidence-based inquiry and learning, and then you use your staff to help assess the value and the applicability of emerging educational trends rather than adding things in. And then the real critical role today is managing uncertainty and risk with competing initiatives. How do you manage the politics of change with courage and resilience to ensure that your school stays on path? Also packed within this is innovation. And I know that today there's rarely ever anywhere you go, whether you're talking conversations are about leadership or learning, that don't include the terms innovation and entrepreneurship. Standard 10, element J, talks about developing and promoting leadership among teachers and staff for inquiry, experimentation, and innovation, and initiating and implementing improvement. Not doing it all on your own, because as things continue to change in this world of hyper change, you have to keep testing new ways to make things happen. And not just your teachers and staff, but students as well. So you've seen your portrait in 3D, and if anyone asks you what you do, what your role is, you can hand them the PSEL standards and say, here's what my role and responsibilities are. And John, I don't know if we want to stop for questions around the PSEL standards before we move to the NELP standards, or should I just continue?
Well, we have just 2 questions that have come in so far, and maybe we could do those and then come back for more questions later.
That sounds great.
The first is real simple, and actually I can answer it. The questioner is asking, is the presentation available after this is over? And the answer is, of course, it's on the NASSP website under nassp.org/webinars, and it'll be available sometime in the next 48 hours. Also, a person has asked which states, how many states are using PSEL standards?
Okay, at this point, and I don't have my list with me, but 8 states have adopted them as they are, as they stand, and many, many more are adapting them. I've been to Utah, Alaska, I know Ohio, DC, many other states are looking at their current standards that are aligned with ISLIC, and they're looking at the PSEL standards, and they're basing what they're doing on those standards while they may not be adopting them standard statement and component on a one-to-one way.
Thank you.
Okay. So then we're going to move to the National Educational Leadership Preparation, or NELP standards. And why are these important? So many people ask me on a day-to-day basis, why do we have to have 2 sets of standards? If we have the new PSEL standards, why aren't they enough? Well, the answer is people who are going through a preparation program are really not ready to address aspirational standards. So the National Educational Leadership Preparation, and there's the key word, standards, are used by institutions of higher education, especially those states that use CAPE as their accreditation process for the preparation of school leaders. And the interdependence of these 4 quadrants of the circle are critical, because as the SPA coordinator, I can tell you that an institution of higher education cannot get nationally recognized if they can't place their candidates in internships at the district level. So those of you who are at the district level and you're good, strong principals, and someone asked you to mentor someone from higher education, think about it, because 2 things you're doing. 1, you're improving the preparation program by aligning it with actual practice. And 2, you're building the principal pipeline for your district. So the better prepared the candidates are who leave the preparation program, the better the principal pipeline. And at the state level, which aligns with the Council of Chief State School Officers, the school leader licensure should be aligned with the standards that are used in preparation. And then finally, we as the national organizations want great leaders in each school, and that's how you get there. On the right-hand side, you can just see where I made a presentation to Alaska and showed all the universities in Alaska that are using the NELP standards. And why 2 sets of standards? The NELP are at the beginning level. So notice in the words professional standards for educational leaders, these are aspirational standards. National Educational Leader Preparation standards, these are for beginning level. Both sets of standards are approved and owned by NPBEA. They're perfectly aligned. So the new NELP standards have a crosswalk of how each NELP standard aligns with the PSEL standard. So if you have first-year principals in your district and you're trying to support them, you can look at what they should know and be able to do, and how that links to where you need to move from the preparation level to the novice level to the proficient level to the mastery level. For use by states, districts, and practitioners, and now since I did this, 9 states have adopted the NELP, are institutions of higher ed for preparation. This is the interesting fact that there's 1 set of standards for PSEL, for emerging, developing, and distinguished educational leaders. Because in the institutions of higher education, they're preparing both school building level leaders and district level leaders, there are 2 separate sets of standards. And having served on the NELP committee, we had to take the PSEL standards, reduce the 10 to 7, and reduce the 83 components that you just saw to 25, ensuring that they were perfectly aligned, and everything we had in there is something you could expect someone to know and be able to do when they left the preparation level of the university program. And just to give you a quick look, you can see that these don't surprise you. They're very closely aligned to what you saw in the PSEL standards. You can see the differences are very specific between the building level and the district level. Both need to understand mission, vision, and core values. Both have the ethics and professional norms. A little more in depth at the building level, equity, inclusiveness, and cultural responsiveness. At the district level, equity and cultural leadership. At the school level, you've got more learning and instruction taking place. At the district level, instructional leadership. Another difference is when you get to 6 and 7, operations and management of people, data, and processes, and then where the school level is building professional capacity, the district level is focusing on policy, advocacy, and governance. For both, everyone believes that the internship is critical. That's the application of the theory. So the more application these candidates in the institutions of higher ed have at the district level with really great leaders, the more successful they will be and the more successful the districts will be when they matriculate to the district level. So these standards are, I think they're very exciting and very helpful. I'm stuck. Okay, bear with me a moment. So moving from these standards, what are we at NASSP? What I get asked when I'm out in the field is, this is great. There are all these standards out there now, and we need to make the transition, but where's the curriculum behind them, and what helps us apply them? So we at NASSP believe that everything we're doing should help, just as you in the schools are supposed to be looking at your pyramids, looking at what I call feeder patterns from the elementary to the middle to the secondary schools to higher education. In principal preparation, we need to be working in tandem in the same way from the preparation programs to the district level actual practice. And so every time we convene panels of experts, we convene them across the continuum from the school level to the district level to the institutions of higher education, and all of our rubrics go from preparation to novice to proficient to mastery. And we're moving from breaking ranks, which was more in that achievement mode, to building ranks, which is more in how do we build that pipeline. And we looked at all the standards, the PSEL standards, the ISTE standards, the breaking ranks, our old breaking ranks recommendations, NAESP standards, and the school paradigm that 4-state consortium put together. And we convened panels to say, what does this look like in practice? So we came up with a logic model that you see on the right. Our logic model fleshes out how leadership, so you see leadership, you, the school leader, are the foundation of everything, and identified 2 categories or 2 domain sets of strategies around your building culture and your leading learning, and speaks to how you can make that happen through these dimensions. So if you look and see, I don't think you'll see any surprises under building culture or leading learning. These are all concepts that we've discussed today. Your culture has to be student-centered. You're focusing on equity, on wellness, on global mindedness, communication, ethics, and relationships. And you lead learning through curriculum instruction and assessments, your vision and mission, your human capital management, results orientation, strategic management, collaborative leadership, innovation, and reflection. The committee felt adamant that these components need to be pulled out and addressed for you to be successful today, and they all align perfectly with the PSEL standards. But more importantly, you leaders build the culture and the learning that impacts school success, which then drives student success through the teachers and the staff in the building. So by providing that foundation, the adult success, both professionally and personally, allows the students to be successful not only in college and careers, but also in citizenship and life. So more about that coming in 2018, both the new Building Ranks framework, we'll have 2 surveys that align with it. So these materials will all be available to you. Just wanted to foreshadow that we've taken the challenge we've been given to take these standards and make them live. And so to wrap up, come on. If you look at each of these little faces and see where they aspirationally would like to be, why are we here? Because we want each student to succeed in a global society. Schools and school districts need effective leaders like you to take on the challenges and opportunities facing American education today and in the future. The professional standards for educational leaders paint that portrait, your portrait, one who each student is counting on to help them reach their full potential. And I salute you for taking on this very challenging but rewarding job.
Thank you,
to
Joan.
that, John, I turn it back to you.
Thank you. I'm encouraging people again to enter questions that you might have into the question box, and I will feed them to Joan. The first question that I have for you now, Joan, is, has there been a final approval on the NELP standards?
Yes. The NELP standards were approved in 2015 and are adopted by the National Policy Board for Educational Administrators. They are being developed into the National Educational Leadership Preparation Standards, for which the colleges are basing their preparation programs. Those standards were presented to CAPE. We got some feedback that where we need to give them revisions in March, and then their board meets in June. So as the ELCC standards were to the ISLIC standards, the ISLIC standards no longer exist. The PSEL standards are now in place. The ELCC standards, which are the preparation to ISLIC, are in place until the new NELP or NELP standards go into practice, which we're hoping will be in July.
Thank you. Next question is, remind us where the standards are available.
So if you go to, and John, I don't know, well, I have control. If it just go to NPBEA.org, and on that opening slide, if we can go back to, can I change the view here, John?
Let me try to take it back and see if I can move it back for you.
If I can hit end show.
Okay.
Well, if you go back to the second slide, it'll show you NPBEA.org, and if you hit that link, in the top bar at the top of the page, it'll say PSEL, and when you open that, at the bottom of that page, there's a link to the PSEL standards. So you can get the PDF of the standards from right there.
And I remind everybody that these slides will be on the NASSP website at nassp.org/webinar, so you can get that link that way as well. Joan, when will the NASSP building ranks materials be available?
So we're in production right now. We're going through very stringent reliability and validity studies with a psychometrician. So the building ranks framework itself, the print book, should be available in the first quarter of 2018, so most likely March. Then we're moving to an e-book. We're also going to be moving to an online community where you can share your practice. Not sure when that's going to happen, but it's in the roadmap. We're developing 2 surveys, one on a 360 on people's perception of leadership and a 360 on the perception of culture, all linked back specifically to these dimensions, to these standards. And then those should be available within the second quarter of 2018, which is April, May, June. We're also developing, we're really excited about this because all these materials were developed by practitioners. So we sat around and said, what does a day in the life of a principal look like? What kind of challenges, situations are they faced with? And what should they be able to know and do to address them from a preparation level all the way through a mastery level? We're building an online diagnostic tool. So it's supposed to be used for growth, like a strengths finder, where you can go through these activities. It's really cool. We're building it right now. It's like you're actually on your desktop. You get emails, you go to meetings, and then you get a report back that says, here are your strengths, here are areas you might want to develop. They'll link back to the building ranks framework, and we're excited about that as well because the practitioner set, and we start everything with a Senate why statement. Why do we do this? Then we have the definition of each of those dimensions. Then we have actual strategies you could use with the dimensions. And the most exciting part is we have illustrative examples where we've gone to principals across the country in rural, suburban, urban, large schools, small schools, and asked them what it looks like in practice. Those are there. Then we have reflection questions you could follow, and then resources you can use in your school. So we're really excited about it as a real hands-on tool for you to use the way you want to use it.
Thank you. We have a couple more questions that have come in, and we just have a few more minutes. So is there a link to the PSEL standards on the NASSP website?
That is a good question. If there's not, I will get one there.
Okay, thank you. And how can standards help principals build their collaborative leadership or distributed leadership skills?
Well, 2 things. If you take these standards as they are and really look at those components, the components tell you the elements. So it allows you to open the conversations even with your staff around, all right, I would love to work with you on having you help identify practices or programs that may be more effective or, that enhance what we're already doing, not that what you're doing is not already effective, and looking at the data to help inform those decisions, and then understanding that with rights come responsibilities. If you want, I'm happy to distribute the leadership not only to the adults in the building, but students as well. If you want to take on some of these roles, then what should be the responsibilities that are related to take on these roles, because you're all responsible for each other. So I think those are there. And then in our framework, we're really giving activities and situations that help guide that work.
Thank you. I think this next question is a great question to wind up on, and that is, am I expected to learn and do all that's in these standards?
if you are, I want to see your cape, because you're either Superman or Batman, or I think that they're situational. Some you may need in your school at some time for a particular purpose. Others, you identify people on your staff who can do those things for you. So you're the chief executive officer of your building, and you have staff. That's why these relationships are so important. The broader school community, the parents, knowing what they are and what needs to be done, and then identifying ways to facilitate them is your job. Being able to do each one of them, that would be a bit challenging for all of us, I think.
Thank you. And I'm not sure which one of us, there we are. The invitation is open to all principals, and members, of course, are eligible for discounts, but the principals meeting next summer, July 11th through 13, 2018 in Chicago at the McCormick Center is open to everyone, and you can get information about how to enroll and how to register by going to the website, that NASSP conference website, where you'll get all the information you'd like to know. And Jen, I understand someone will be doing a presentation, maybe you, at the conference about the standards. Is that correct?
Well, we will, but even more exciting, when we plan our conferences now, we bring in practitioners and say, what do you want at this conference? What should we do? So the three strands are, and I did not direct this, are building culture, leading learning, and designing the future. And so we've got really exciting thought leaders. I think one of the most exciting things is our thought leaders on the third day are practicing principles, because we firmly believe that you know more than anyone else what you're doing and what you need. And these three principles have all been digital principles for us, so they're on the Designing the Future Day. So there are many, many exciting aspects of the conference this summer. We've selected the sessions. They're all led by practicing principals. Great opportunity to get together, to network, and to share your practice with each other.
Thank you. And I would like to end with, and I've lost the last slide, so I'll just do it verbally. I'd like to end with a reminder that you can reach Joan at octorj@nassp.org. If you have questions that you would like to follow up on, you can do that. And with that, I'll sign off and say thank you for being with us today. And Joan, thank you again for an excellent webinar.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.